Tiffany Hayes still steaming over getting embarrassed. Her heart ripped out. Embarrassed on national television. Tiffany Hayes still steaming internally. Oh, I almost had her. So what does Tiffany Hayes do? She runs to Threads, the cesspool that is Threads, the cuckoo bin of cuckoo birds that is Threads, where she's amongst her people. And what are her people doing? Just threatening Caitlin Clark.
And became something else entirely. While Clark was in the post-game presser talking about Aaliyah Boston's double-double and Kelsey Mitchell's shooting, Hayes was on Threads liking posts that told fans to hurt Clark. So now the question isn't whether Hayes was a... Do you think the league should ban Tiffany Hayes? Comment down below.
Everybody's talking about this logo 3 that Caitlin Clark took on Tiffany Hayes, but not enough people are talking about the fact that these two were jawing all night long, all night, ooh yes.
7 for 15 from the field, 4 for 9 from 3, 9 assists, and scratch marks up and down her arms. That's what Tiffany Hayes' defensive game plan produced after 40 minutes of grabbing, holding, and raking Clark on every single possession. Hayes didn't stop Clark. She just made Clark angrier.
Tiffany started the banter, getting in Caitlin's face after this bucket on her, and then making sure the ref knew that she thought Caitlin deserved a foul after this assist. Tiffany kept going to work, putting the big dog flex on Caitlin after this tough bucket, but Caitlin said, all right, enough's enough, now it's my turn. The very next possession, Caitlin takes it down the court with 2 defenders in her face, makes a tough bucket, and like me on a Sunday at the park, says, where's my and one?
The first quarter is where you could see the mismatch clearly, because Clark either scored or assisted on 17 of Indiana's first 21 points, and she was doing it directly against Hayes, finding gaps in Golden State's rotations before the defense could even set up. When Hayes crowded her, Clark attacked the rim. When Hayes gave her space, Clark pulled up. Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell kept getting clean touches because Clark was drawing so much attention, and Hayes couldn't figure out how to stop any of it without just grabbing her, so that's what she kept doing.
Tip says, anything you could do, I can do better, and says, Caitlin Clark, get out of my way. And I haven't seen somebody set to the sunken place like that since 2017. Caitlin then starts complaining to the refs, saying, all right, enough is enough. Some of these should be foul calls. And then Tiff says, all right, some of these shouldn't be foul calls, and I'm gonna let the refs know that we're having some technical difficulties here.
Hayes fouled, held, and clawed through the second quarter trying to slow Clark down, and Clark kept drawing contact on drives that should have been whistled a lot more than they were. Clark mentioned in the postgame that she felt she was getting fouled on drives without seeing calls, and watching the tape, it's hard to argue with her. The contact was real and it was constant, and a lot of it just didn't get called.
On the last play of the first half, Caitlin says, fuck it. I've been going back and forth with Tiff this whole first half, but it's time for me to take on the entire Golden State Valkyries team. Not just the team. She was ready to take on the whole organization, the whole city of San Francisco, the whole...
By the time the third quarter started, Golden State's plan had basically dissolved. Clark shifted into a different gear entirely, hitting tough layups through contact and drawing fouls on back-to-back possessions. Her passing in that quarter was the kind that just breaks a defense because she was finding cutters and shooters before Golden State's rotations could close out, and the Valkyries kept arriving a step late on every read she made. Clark hit an and-one layup through contact to give Indiana the lead at 53-52, and the crowd at Gainbridge was already loud.
Anyway, the second half starts. The Fever think they have the ball stolen from Tiffany Hayes, but instead they get called for a foul, and Caitlin is losing her damn mind. And now, the moment everybody's been talking about, Caitlin says, I've had enough. I am pulling up from the logo right in Tiffany's face. And like Matthew McConaughey in How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, she says, this is about you and me. You and me. All right, all right, all right.
Then she pulled up from the logo, about 33 feet out, while Hayes' defensive effort kept producing nothing but contact fouls. You don't talk trash to someone who just embarrassed you from the logo and then walk away with the moral high ground.
Caitlin goes full demon mode. She turns into MJ, and I'm not talking about Jackson, I'm talking about Jordan. Just watch this. She drives to the lane, gets the and one, sticks out the tongue just like MJ. She then hits another deep three over Tiffany Hayes as she's jogging back on defense, hits her with the 3-finger, and she might be a little Jackson. She starts moonwalking back, says, yahoo! And just for good measure, one last time with 2 minutes left, Caitlin Clark complains about another call, and Tiff Hayes says, tech her up. Technical difficulties.
The Fever won this game as a team, not just on Clark's numbers. Boston finished with 20 points and 16 rebounds, going 8 for 15 from the field and absolutely controlling the glass on both ends. Mitchell dropped 19 points. Clark credited both of them directly in the postgame, saying that when defenses hunted her in ISO situations, the team forced contested twos, and she specifically praised Boston for cleaning up the glass defensively, calling it a reason they held on. That kind of unselfishness from Clark in the post-game presser, crediting her teammates first while she's the one who just put up 22 and 9, tells you a lot about why this Fever group actually functions. Clark talked about the officiating carefully, saying she tries to focus on what she can control, but the frustration about uncalled fouls on her drives came through. The numbers back her up. She absorbed more contact than she drew free throws for, and that gap was visible all night. After getting torched for 22 points and 9 assists, Hayes walked up to a microphone and told reporters the refs called the game in Clark's favor. Just let that sit for a second. The player who grabbed, held, and raked Clark's arms for 40 straight minutes and still couldn't stop her, stood in front of cameras and complained that Clark gets too many calls.
That's it. She would never get to play in games. No questions? I'll ask.
If the refs would have made the right calls, Caitlin Clark would have destroyed you even more. They called this a foul on Caitlin Clark when she didn't even touch you. She gets elbowed, and they gave Caitlin Clark a technical, sets a screen, they give her a flagrant.
Hayes didn't frame it as frustration either. Her post-game comments came out sharp and prepared, centered on the idea that Clark gets preferential treatment because of her profile and her marketability, that the calls follow the money, basically. It sounded like something Hayes had been sitting on for a while, not something that just slipped out after a tough loss. She said it with edge, with conviction, like she'd already decided what the narrative was going to be before she even reached the podium. The numbers don't cooperate with that narrative, though. Clark shot 47% from the field, went 4 for 9 from 3, and every foul she drew connected directly to real contact from Hayes and Janelle Salon on drives that the tape clearly shows. You can't grab a player's jersey, rake her arms on every drive, and then complain the refs noticed some of it. The box score doesn't lie, and Clark's foul drawing wasn't a product of star treatment. It was a product of Hayes fouling her constantly.
Where she's amongst her people. And what are her people doing? Just threatening Caitlin Clark. You know, nothing major, just threatening Caitlin Clark. Just saying, hey, I was ready to roll out for you. I was ready to throw some hands for you, Tip. Throw some hands for you if you needed to. Tiffany Hayes, of course. Yeah, that's real. Yeah, that's love. Yeah, that's love right there. That's love right there. I would say you can't make this up. But are we surprised?
But the post-game presser turned out to be the least damaging thing Hayes did that night. After she left that room, she pulled out her phone and got on Threads. And she wasn't debating basketball strategy with anyone. A fan posted, "Listen, I got some cousins we don't speak about that will write at dawn upon request. Just let me know," which is pretty clearly a post describing organizing physical violence against Clark. Hayes replied, "That's real," with a laughing emoji, and hit the like button. That happened while Clark was still at her own podium, crediting Boston's double-double and talking about what the Fever need to clean up before their next game. Clark spoke about her teammates with genuine warmth, and Hayes was on her phone affirming a post about sending people to physically hurt Clark. Those two moments ran parallel to each other in real time.
This is pathetic. WNBA players should not be interacting on social media with fans joking about causing players harm. And this is what's been taking place. I talk ish because you're never on my teams, but I was ready to support your crash out. That's fair.
Screenshots spread fast. By the next morning, basically everyone in basketball Twitter and Threads had seen them, and the reaction wasn't complicated or split down the middle. Fans, analysts, and other players called it disgusting and demanded the WNBA do something real about it. Not a fine, not a memo, an actual suspension or ban. The volume of that reaction was immediate, and it was loud. People started pointing directly at the WNBA's no space for hate policy, asking out loud whether a player liking and responding to posts about organizing physical harm against another player qualifies for disciplinary action under it. That policy exists to prevent conduct that creates hostile or threatening environments around players, and endorsing fan violence against a specific player by name fits that description without much squinting required.
Your composure was much better than mine would have been, I'll tell you that. My growth is a gift and a curse, but mostly a gift. Oh, good to know. We were ready to take up collections if they tried to find you and everything. My peeps. Listen, I got some cousins we don't speak about that will ride at dawn upon request. Just let me know. Ha 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 ha. That's real.
What made the whole thing land harder is that Clark's safety situation isn't hypothetical. She's had a stalker arrested, a person who physically followed her, which led to canceled meet and greets and real security adjustments around her schedule. That's documented. So when a veteran professional athlete responds to a fan post about sending people after Clark with "that's real" and a laughing emoji, it's not just bad social media behavior. It's a professional athlete with a platform signaling to fans that aggression toward Clark is something she finds funny, and that signal reaches people who already have a history of crossing lines around her.
Are we surprised with how we've seen players in this league behave for the last 3 years? Are we surprised that that's how Tiffany Hayes is going about it? Inciting violence, condoning attacks.
The Golden State Valkyries didn't come into Gainbridge Fieldhouse on May 22nd with a basketball plan. They came with a physical one, and you could tell within the first few minutes because Tiffany Hayes was grabbing Clark's jersey on every cut, holding her off screens, and raking her arms on drives in ways that had nothing to do with actually stopping the ball. The refs let a lot of it go, and by the time the first quarter ended, Clark's arms already had visible scratch marks on them. And the Valkyries hadn't even reached their most aggressive stretches yet. What the Valkyries were doing wasn't some creative defensive scheme. It was a deliberate strategy to make Clark miserable on every single possession, to wind her up, frustrate her, and hopefully get her out of her rhythm, so they put Hayes on her and basically told Hayes to make the night as uncomfortable as possible. Analysts watching the game described the atmosphere as a powder keg. That's not an exaggeration when you watch the tape, because the contact was constant. It was visible, and enough of it went uncalled that Clark was absorbing punishment without getting the whistle.
Not during the game, I came out and I literally leaned over on the bench and I was like, "Ty, do I have a scratch on my head? Like, it hurts." She goes, "No, you're fine." I literally looked in the mirror and I look like freaking Harry Potter.
And it wasn't just Clark absorbing it. Sophie Cunningham went live after the game and literally put her face on camera to show the scratches on her own face, because the Valkyries were bringing that same energy to anyone in a Fever jersey. Cunningham didn't need to say much. The scratches said it. Right?
Gotta make you pay with that three. Final 5 seconds. Can Hull do it again? Not this time. And that'll take us into halftime. Well, some extracurriculars. Here is both teams head to their respective benches.
Late in the game, Clark set a hard screen and got whistled for a flagrant foul with about 2 minutes left, a call that sent Gainbridge into an uproar. Clark's reaction said it all. And a flagrant. Wow. The crowd's frustration made sense because the Valkyries had been throwing elbows and clawing arms all night without seeing that same whistle energy from the officiating crew. None of it slowed Clark down, and that's the part the Valkyries completely miscalculated. Every time Hayes grabbed her, Clark drove harder. Every time the refs swallowed their whistles, Clark pulled up from deeper. Coach Stephanie White put it plainly after the game, calling Clark an emotional player, whose fire feeds and carries us on runs that we might not have made if she didn't have it. That's exactly what happened, because the more physical Golden State got, the more locked in Clark became.
Now, take a look at this here altercation where Caitlin Clark hit a logo bomb. I mean, absolutely hit a logo bomb all over. And then she's talking that talking cash, SHIT. And you're going to see look at Myisha Hines-Allen running to get in front of her. Don't you dare do nothing. You better fall back. You better fall back.
Myisha Hines-Allen was all over these moments, sprinting into the frame whenever things escalated to get between Clark and whoever was in her face. Hines-Allen did it during the salon situation at halftime and again later in the third quarter. And that kind of teammate behavior matters because in past seasons, Clark sometimes looked isolated when defenders targeted her. Not anymore. This Fever team moves together when things get ugly. Clark finished the night with scratch marks on her arms, 5 personal fouls, and 22 points on 47% shooting. The Valkyries' strategy produced scratch marks and a loss. But Hayes wasn't done making noise when the buzzer sounded. The WNBA launched No Space for Hate in May 2025, and the league rolled it out with real infrastructure behind it. Enhanced technology for detecting hateful comments online, increased security measures around players, mental health resources, and league-wide messaging about what kind of environment the WNBA wants to be. That's not a press release policy. That's a policy with teeth, or at least it's supposed to be. And right now, Hayes' situation is sitting directly on top of it, waiting for the league to decide what those teeth are actually for.
They just hate TJ22. Fans have got a hold of this. Ooh. Fans got a hold of this. So much for the No Space for Hate campaign. I guess WNBA, the Players Association, Kathy Engelbert are okay with actual players saying that's real to someone offering to ride at dawn. Sounds like threatened violence. That's what it sounds like to me. Remember, Caitlin Clark also had a stalker that got arrested. Not a fake stalker, not a make-believe stalker, not an imaginary person stalking her. No, like an actual mentally ill human being following her around to the point where he got his ass arrested.
The league has invoked No Space for Hate before, but mostly in response to fans crossing lines, not players. That's the gap Hayes just exposed, because there's a real difference between the league penalizing a fan in the stands and the league penalizing a player on an opposing roster who logs onto social media after a loss and replies, "That's real," with a laughing emoji to a fan offering to send people to physically hurt Clark. The policy doesn't have a carve-out that says it only applies to people who don't play in the league, so the question of whether it covers Hayes isn't complicated. The question is whether the league has the will to apply it to one of its own players. Whatever the WNBA decides here lands beyond Clark specifically. If Hayes faces no real consequence, every player in the league absorbs that lesson, which is that the conduct policy protects you from fans, but not from a fellow professional who decides to point fans at you after a bad game. That's a genuinely awful precedent to set, and it doesn't fix itself once it's set.
Who's really surprised that this is how these players go about their business? We know most of the players think and act like the WNBA old guard fans. They hate that white girl. They hate her to the core. If nobody was looking and they could just, if they could just hem CC up for a little bit, it would make them feel so good inside.
Clark's safety situation makes this more concrete than a policy debate. She's had a stalker arrested, a person who physically followed her around, which forced her to cancel meet and greets and adjust her security setup in real ways. That's documented. So when Hayes responds to a fan posting about cousins we don't speak about, who will ride at dawn upon request with "that's real" and a laugh, she's not just venting about a tough loss. She's a professional athlete with a platform telling her followers that the idea of organizing physical harm against Clark is something she finds funny. And that message reaches people who already have a documented history of fixating on Clark in ways that go way past basketball fandom. Fans calling for a suspension or an outright ban aren't just angry about a chippy game. They're asking the league to acknowledge that what Hayes did lives in a completely different category than a hard foul or a trash talk exchange on the court. A flagrant foul gets reviewed and penalized. Getting on your phone after the buzzer to affirm fan posts about hurting another player isn't competitive basketball at all, and filing it away as competitive intensity or emotions after a tough loss would be a genuinely embarrassing response from a league that just spent money launching an anti-hate platform.
Please be careful, Caitlyn. Tip Hayes is a thug, and her thug fans are coming for you. Tiffany Hayes has been going on a blocking spree now. Tiffany Hayes has been going through her Twitter mentions of people that have been calling her out for her behavior, and she's just been blocking people because naturally, that's what she would do, right? She would just block fans for doing that. Right over here. Blocked. Can't handle the pressure of being called out.
Other players have raised Clark's safety publicly before, and that conversation started up again fast after the screenshots Fred said. Players around the league want to know whether the security protocols and conduct policies the WNBA promotes are actually built to handle a star who operates under this. That team isn't waiting for the league to protect Clark. The WNBA's viewership numbers are climbing, sponsorship money is up, and Clark drives a measurable portion of both. So whatever the league decides about Hayes is going to be read very carefully by a lot of people watching to see if the protection is real. Clark put up 22 points and 9 assists on 47% shooting while getting scratched and grabbed for 40 minutes, and the Fever won. That part's done. What isn't done is Hayes typing "that's real" with a laughing emoji at a fan post about sending people after Clark. And that's sitting on the WNBA's desk right now waiting for a real response. No space for hate is either a policy or it's a slogan, and whatever the league decides about Hayes answers that question for every player in the league. Do you think the league should ban Tiffany Hayes? Comment down below. Like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss out. Click the video on the screen, and we will see you in the next one.